What if everything we've been told about autoimmunity is wrong? I'm Elizabeth Yarnell. After awakening partially blind one morning in 1999, a doctor told me my multiple sclerosis would put me in a wheelchair within 10 years. I refused to accept that as the end of the story, so I started investigating. Welcome to the Inflammation Investigator, the podcast that uncovers the inflammation lurking underneath your ailments. Because autoimmune and chronic conditions should not be viewed as death knells when they are actually alarm bells. I'm a traditional naturopath and founder of the Inflammation Academy. And in 2 episodes every week, we dig into what conventional medicine might be missing. If you're living with chronic or unexplained symptoms, this investigation is for you. Your body has been trying to tell you something. Let's start listening. Hello, and welcome back to the Inflammation Investigator. Today, we are having a very exciting episode, but before we do, I just want to put in a little uh, explainer first about why my voice might sound a little hoarse, because I just returned from my 35th college reunion at Bowdoin College in Brunswick, Maine, and um, I'm going to say I didn't really sleep for about 4 days. So you can hear it in my voice, and I apologize for that. This is not how my voice normally sounds if you are a regular listener to the podcast, but rest assured, by the next episode, I'm sure it will sound much better. And of course, by the time you're listening to this episode, this will have been recorded a month or more even before. So, but just as you're listening, that is why my voice does sound hoarse. So today's episode is going to be really interesting because this is a topic I haven't covered before on the podcast. We're going to talk about perimenopause, but we are going to also talk about how spirituality can come into your healing process and your therapeutic process. And it's going to be an interesting ride because I don't know much about this myself. So let me introduce you to Dr. Jen Pfleghaar, a double board certified physician in emergency and integrative medicine. She earned her medical degree from Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine. She completed residency at St. Vincent's Mercy Hospital and fellowship at the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine. She believes true wellness thrives when mind, body, and spirit are aligned with God's design. Diagnosed with Hashimoto's, she became passionate about autoimmune healing, hormone balance, and root cause medicine. Dr. Jen co-authored Eat, Sleep, Move, Breathe, and serves on the boards of the Invisible Disabilities Association and American Board of Integrative Medicine. Through her practice, Healthy by Dr. Jen, she provides virtual care and shares education as Integrative Dr. Mom. I'm sorry, as at Integrative Dr. Mom. That's her social media handle. She lives on a mini farm in Tennessee with her husband and 4 children. She loves cheering on her kids at their games, lifting weights, reading scripture, and tending to her chickens. Her newest book, an international bestseller, The Perimenopause Reset, was written on a mission to change the health of 500,000 women navigating perimenopause, empowering them with faith-based and science-backed strategies to reclaim their energy, clarity, and joy. So, Dr. Jen, welcome to the pod.
Hi, thank you for having me, Elizabeth. Super excited.
Yes, this is, as I was mentioning, this is a topic I've never explored on my own or with a podcast guest. So this should be an interesting ride. Why don't you start by telling us how did you end up here?
Yeah, absolutely. I knew I wanted to be a doctor in high school and went to traditional medical school. I actually went to DO school, which is just like MD school, except we see the body more as a whole. And we also do osteopathic manipulative medicine, which is kind of like what chiropractors do, can do cranial sacral, muscle energy. So cool stuff like that. And then I went to train in my residency to be an emergency room doctor. And I was out there as a brand new attending in a community ER that also was a level two trauma center. We would still get some violent stuff. And I remember coming home and telling my husband, like, something's missing. All these people that I'm seeing, because I moved out to a community ER, they all had chronic disease. Like most of the things I was seeing was chronic disease that was preventable. I mean, it was an emergency at that point, but a lot of it could be prevented. And then I would see people for like chronic abdominal pain and bloating. And, we would just do tons of CT scans on them. Well, I wouldn't. I would talk with them about the radiation, but it was really frustrating. So I went back and did a 2-year fellowship in integrative medicine and opened a practice and still work in the ER occasionally also. Keeps me pretty grounded about like what's going on out there and new diseases on the horizon or threats or what new rashes are showing up. So it's a good balance right now, but it was really hard to see that conventional medicine just wasn't going to the root cause. And even as a DO, where we are supposed to see the body more as a whole, we were so infiltrated with big pharma. And, you see a symptom and you treat it with a medication. And I used to believe in that. I used to think it was really cool. Like, you have a sore throat, go get antibiotics. Like, you got it, you cured it. And it another big eye-opening thing for me was me being diagnosed with an autoimmune disease in medical school. So it's really interesting because now hindsight is 2020. I look back and I see all the things that contributed to my autoimmune disease, which is in remission, but I still have consequences from it, from its mismanagement. And I truly believe that God made it for good. What was meant for evil, my autoimmune disease, it's for good. That's why I'm sitting right here. This is why I help people, really get to the root cause and reverse some of these diseases. But it's interesting because I have tallied up the cost of my medications and ultrasounds and labs and all of that with my thyroid disease, and it's like over $20,000. So
Ooh.
yeah, and yeah, it's crazy, right? So with my thyroid, what had happened was I was in high school and just something was off with my cycle. It wasn't normal. My mom actually asked for thyroid labs and a thyroid ultrasound, and I had a nodule. So then we started out this whole thing trying to shrink the nodule, all this stuff, and no one checked antibodies. No one. And this was a long time ago. This was over 20 years ago. So, I mean, the fact that, my mom even asked for thyroid, but what was so frustrating is with my cycle being abnormal, they put me on birth control to fix that. Birth control doesn't fix anything. Let me tell your guests out there. And it causes inflammation. So that kind of cascaded me down further, like I had some like PMDD really bad because of the birth control. It made me feel crazy, but I had to be on it, and it's all this deception. So here I am in medical school, my nodule is bigger. And then we went into this could be cancer because I had a biopsy, which was inconclusive. So here I am, my first year of medical school, going into my final exams before Christmas. I had a new nephew that was just born. They were saying I wouldn't be able to see him or hold him if I had the radioactive iodine. This is an awful thing to go through. And, praise God, I woke up and they said it wasn't cancer, it was an autoimmune disease, and there was nothing you could do about it. Your autoimmune disease will destroy your thyroid. And that was deception, that's not true. And even, now in 2026, there are endocrinologists and doctors that don't think autoimmune diseases can be reversed. And that is insane to me. But that was just part of my journey. And now, like I said, my Hashimoto's is in remission. My goal is to help, women mainly have the autoimmune diseases. So I really have mostly women, female patients, but it's really the spiritual part of it is that sometimes we are told things by doctors, by people in our lives that we are a certain way health-wise and we will never get better, or there's no way out, or you can't reverse it. And it's almost like kind of a curse put over you. And then you start believing that lie. So I think that that is something that I see a lot with women. And we don't like talk about the lie. Like we need to bring the lie, like say that, be like, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I was told I could never heal. And that was a lie. And if we do that, then we can bring some lightness to that darkness. And there's just so many women struggling out there with autoimmune diseases and they feel really hopeless and they don't need to. And I'm a good example of that. And I really do believe conventional medicine has a place and I think it is wonderful and I am so grateful for my training and I use that training every day. But we also need to realize the bias with using medications and not letting the body heal. So that was the long story, but it's important because this stuff happened to me, and I know a lot of your listeners have autoimmune disease, and it's okay to believe that your body can heal because it really can.
In fact, I think it's essential to believe that your body can heal. And I would posit that probably most people who have chronic illness or autoimmune disease may have been told at some point that, this is just your life. You're just going to have to deal with this. This is incurable. And you're never going to be able to live a normal life because I'm going to just throw this out there. I too love conventional medicine for many things. If I am in a car accident, send me to the nearest emergency room. Please put me back together. Antibiotics are great. Um, Lots of great things have come out of conventional medicine, emergency medicine especially, but not only. But when it comes to chronic illness, that's where conventional medicine really falls on its face. And I think that doctors don't really understand what's going on in autoimmune or chronic illness, and that is the whole impetus for this podcast. So this is really cool that we're talking today. So now, before we get much further, people, if you are looking and watching this episode, you can see on the wall behind Dr. Jen her latest book, The Perimenopause Reset. And I have my own copy, so I just want to show that off too. But what I want to ask you, Dr. Jen, is how did you end up focusing on perimenopause?
Yeah, well, most of my patients that would come to my office were perimenopausal. And I think that this happens, it's really interesting because when we look at this big flux of hormones and the big changes and the estradiol being erratic and the progesterone declining, is that we do have an inflammatory state. We're having histamine issues that maybe weren't a problem. It's kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. Like it seems so sudden, but your body has just been compensating for so long. And I see this with women with blood sugar, with autoimmune disease flares, with maybe mold symptoms that they've had a mold exposure, college dorm is very common. And then they've just dealt with it, or maybe they've gained weight and gained weight and gained weight. And then like they're gaining massive weight in perimenopause. So it's really interesting because perimenopause is not just about fixing hormones. It's also fixing root causes, blood sugar, cortisol, all of that. And it's interesting with women because cortisol causes such an issue. I mean, women, especially in their 30s and 40s, 50s, going into menopause, they're just really stressed. I mean, and I've seen all different personalities, laid back type B personalities, type A, high achievers. They all are pretty much stressed out. And even if they're not running around with a tight schedule, I mean, if they have some underlying issue that is also putting stress on the body and might have for decades, and then you put that extra stress of the hormone fluctuations and and ovulatory cycles and all of these things, and it kind of pushes them over the edge. The good news is they have symptoms. So when we look at these symptoms in perimenopause, we can find the root cause. So I see symptoms as a blessing, instead of a curse, I guess, where when we have a symptom, it's not like, conventional medical school where you have the symptom and then you line it up with the medication, you line it up with the disease process and the root cause. So I think that when women are going through this stage of their life, they should be like, okay, this is exposing some things and some problems in my health that I have this opportunity to correct this now, before I'm aging. But it can be really frustrating to women in perimenopause. They feel very out of control. And this is why in my book, I also talk about like the spiritual component because that can keep us really grounded. We think of, so when we moved out to Tennessee, something that was really different was the soil here. It's almost like more like sandy clay as opposed to in Ohio where we lived, where it was just like dirt all the way down. There wasn't stone, so the trees in Ohio could really plant their roots down deep, where here the trees just blow over in storms. It's very different. So if we are rooted, for me, it's rooted in Christ. If we are rooted in our spirituality, then we are more stable. We're more stable. We have that strong foundation. And when we go through these different seasons, it's a little bit easier and we're not as inflamed. We're not as stressed out either.
So let's back up just a minute and let's define perimenopause. Like, what does it mean? When I was like in my 20s, I never even heard the word perimenopause. Did it even exist 35 years ago? I mean, or is this just something that we've more recently named and identified?
Yeah, the thing is, it's always been there. So peri means before menopause, and it can be,
Hmm.
you know, anytime the month before to 10 years before. So perimenopause is more of defined as more symptoms, okay? Because we can't really put an exact time, like when you're 35, you will go in perimenopause because it's different for every woman. It's kind of like preheating an oven to like 350 degrees, right? Where that endpoint is menopause. So every oven that you use is going to preheat differently. Like my oven and your oven, we set a timer. It's going to take at different times to get to the 350. So we have to think about perimenopause like that. It's very specific for the person. And it's interesting, they did a study, a retroactive study, where they just surveyed some women, and women are earlier and earlier complaining of perimenopause symptoms. It's like sometimes in their early 30s. And what are some of these symptoms? Well, it's a list really, really long. It could be anxiety, depression, heart palpitations, gaining weight, hot flashes, difficulty sleeping, or you're not as restful at night, or you're waking up at night. So a lot of different symptoms for perimenopause, but they are impacting quality of life. So I'm seeing, I mean, I will see patients in their early 30s with perimenopausal symptoms. So another very common one is their menstrual cycle changes. It's either a lot heavier than it used to be, or it's shortened, meaning it used to be like a 28-day cycle, which is common, and then it's like 27 and then 25. So these changes are changes in the hormones because we have progesterone that starts to decline, or sometimes we have an anovulatory cycle when we don't ovulate for many reasons. Sometimes it's the quality of the eggs or a negative feedback loop. So there's a lot of different reasons. It used to be polycystic ovarian syndrome, now it's PMOS, that those women, because their blood sugar is so dysregulated and high, they're not ovulating. So that can cause like symptoms like luteal phase progesterone deficit. So there's a lot of different things that contribute to our cycle. I think if we look at the big picture of anyone listening from any age that is menstruating, from teens until age 50, your menstrual cycle is a really good vital sign of your health because fertility in general is a sign of good health. So we are meant to reproduce, we're meant to be fertile. So if we have a normal menstrual cycle and can get pregnant, easily, then that means overall we're in good health. So we are not going to carry a baby if we're in really poor health. That's just not how the body works. I mean, you can see this with animals too. Like I have chickens, and if a chicken is sick, they're not gonna reproduce their eggs. They're not, they're sick. They're not really laying eggs right there. So people are kind of the same where their body will be more protective. And stress is a big part of this. So if you're running from a bear or a tiger, you're in that fight or flight all the time, your body doesn't feel safe and is not going to want to carry a baby. If you are rest and digest, parasympathetic state, your stress levels are even, they follow a nice rhythm as they were intended to, then you're going to be more likely to have a normal cycle, ovulate normally, be fertile. So it's really important. And I feel like the problem is with, normal day medicine, all this birth control, everything going on. If we give a woman birth control to regulate their cycle, which it's not what you're doing, I have quotations for that. Um, you're taking away a woman's ability to check their health with their cycle, and I think that that's not really fair because let's give an example. So, say a woman in her 20s or 30s starts having really heavy bleeding. Okay. It's just really heavy. It's different. Well, I look at that and I say, well, something's going on with estrogen metabolism or something's going on with your production of progesterone. So, we need to see what's going on. But for me, that's concerning because if we don't fix it in the 20s or 30s, they get to their 40s or 50s and their estrogen metabolism was not moving down a good pathway. Think of it like trash building up. If you never take out your trash in your house is going to smell like garbage. You're going to get rats. You're going to get all kinds of things going on. It's not pleasant. And if estrogen builds up and we don't take out the trash, our liver isn't detoxing it, our gut isn't taking it out, well, that can build up toxic metabolites in our body and lead to things like cancer, fibroids, cysts. And these are so common. But if we traced it all the way back, we can even ask our mothers or our aunts, did you have heavy cycles? When did you go through menopause? Was that transition hard? Then we can get little clues, and that gives us an insight on what we can do. And honestly, the book, The Perimenopause Reset, it goes through all of that. I've gotten some feedback that it's too much information, but from some people, but I wanted to have it in there so people know exactly how estrogen is metabolized, what that's a warning sign from, how you can help support your body and support your cycle, especially through these transitional times.
One of the things that happened to me during perimenopause and menopause was that I started to thicken around the waist where I had never thickened before in my life and get kind of almost like a pooch belly, like a beer belly, which of course I don't even drink beer. But it was like a belly like I had never had in my life. And somebody suggested to me that I get a massage, and I got an abdominal massage, and it released all of this, what I think was trapped estrogen that was causing so much inflammation in my stomach, and it was so insane how much my stomach literally deflated after just that one intervention. So
Mhm.
I think that estrogen getting trapped in our tissues is so much more common than we have ever been led to believe. And I agree with you about this birth control. I mean, I see teenagers being put on IUDs and in birth control so young. And then I see women in their 50s who have been in their on their IUDs for decades, maybe. And I have one friend, I'll give you two IUD stories and then we'll move on. I have one friend who was like, I'm never getting rid of my IUD. I love my IUD. And I asked her, I said, well, how are you going to know when you go through menopause? Because
Exactly.
you're still getting all these hormones and you're now in your mid 50s and you still have the IUD in? Like, how are you even going to be able to tell what's happening in your body? And then I
Mhm.
had another friend who was in her early 50s and was having heavy bleeding. And her OBGYN said, "Oh, we'll just put you on an IUD." And I was like, "That's insane. You are a single woman. You are not having sex. This is not even for preventative, for contraceptive. Why would she put you on an IUD?" And then so the doctor placed the IUD and it migrated up to the top of her uterus and perforated her uterus. She became septic. She had to end up having a full hysterectomy. I mean, it was a huge disaster.
That is horrible. And yes, so I agree with you. And I just had a patient, she said I could share a story. I wanted her to take out her IUD. It takes a while to convince women, because it is convenient, but we can't trade convenience for our health. Okay. I mean, we see that a lot with our food system. Like we just can't. You're gonna pay somewhere. So if you pay for convenience, it's probably with your health. But hers, they pulled it out and there was like a mass, like tissue growing on it. And it was so hard for them to
Oh
get it
my
out.
gosh.
And like, I'm like, they should write a case study about this. They should talk about this. And then she had a little bit of a hormonal crash after that. And her body was probably freaking out because it was reacting to this, causing inflammation. I mean, it is a foreign tissue in there. And then my other favorite thing is a lot of OB-GYNs will tell their patients that the Mirena and some of these drug releasing IUDs that they're not absorbed, that the hormone's not absorbed, it stays local in their uterus. And that is a bunch of crap. Like that is just lies. So I don't know if the rep told them that, but shame on whoever. Like we shouldn't be lying to women. And to your point about what happens. So in perimenopause, this is like the cookie cutter. This is like, I should start betting money on this if I gambled, but it would be a good, it's just like crazy. So they go to their OB-GYN, they have perimenopause symptoms, patient's desperate, patient's scared, patient doesn't know is going on. So first, sometimes they're just told they're depressed. Usually it's just, and yeah, they are because their hormones are out of balance. They probably are. And then they put them on usually birth control, sometimes a progestin only, which that's not progesterone, it's progestin and it's like round the clock. And then they put them on an SSRI antidepressant, which is terrible too, and changes brain chemistry. So this is what they're given, and it's horrible. And they're gaslit. And then they're like, you should be fine with this. And then they're not. So the other problem with getting on birth control in your 40s or 50s is, as you said, you don't know when you're going through menopause. And it's a really hard transition too, because you're basically you're just shutting down all the feedback loops. And it's not good, it's not safe. We know oral birth control especially increases cancer risk. There's a big study on that out of Sweden. So these are all informed consent decisions that people should be having, and they're not being had. And the other concern that I think about is when we look at the research, the 2 year period before menopause, so late, really late perimenopause, where you have very spaced out cycles, they definitely should be working with someone that that knows hormones, that they're monitoring them, because you get most of your 25% bone loss during those 2 years. So we really,
Oh.
yeah, it's really, I could send you some of the studies. I'm a big nerd in my free time. I like to read studies. So, which is a good thing, but maybe it's, I'm a little weird, but it's very fascinating because if we really want to get in the weeds, we can separate perimenopause into early, which a lot of the times just chase tree berry, Vitex, and some adaptogens will like get them on their way and correct things. And then we have mid perimenopause, which at that point I'm like, okay, we're going to do a luteal phase progesterone. We might do a little estriol to the face, into the vaginal area if we need that. And then we have late perimenopause, where this I'm starting to use daily or every other day urine tracking, and really get a look at their FSH, their progesterone, their estradiol, and their LH. So really cool stuff on the horizon with technology, with personalized perimenopause care. And that's what it all should be, because like you and me, like both have autoimmune diseases, or mine's in remission, but we're both women, we both have menstrual cycles, but We are so different. Like, and our experience is so different. So we shouldn't be using a cookie cutter approach to women. And women honestly like deserve better.
I couldn't agree more. I had some conversations just this weekend about how a phase three blind placebo-controlled medical trial is not always the best answer to how the human body, each individual human body, is going to respond to any intervention.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think some of those, pharmaceutical studies, the double-blind placebo-controlled studies, I mean, a lot of those are for safety too, to look at how safe something is. And we are looking at endpoints and when they're good for like emergency medicine. When we did that, I remember there was a lot of research in my residency and it's good. That's how we learn, but we really do have to get for all the nuances of chronic disease, we have to get more personalized because it is different. And even like people's diet, can be different. We can react to different things, have different food sensitivities. We could eat the same meal, you and I, and have a different, continuous glucose monitor, like a different glucose curve. So I'm really all about women using the data, me teaching them on how to read it for their body, and then them making decisions on the daily basis. Because when we look at the relationship with, us and our patients, it's we're not there with them 24/7. So our job is to teach them, doctor means to teach in Latin, and then and empower them, right? And but also keeping them safe. We do have to make sure we're not missing big things, red flags. So, many times I'll tell patients, yes, you need to go and get that test or get that ultrasound or let's get some extra blood work. So, but really the new personalized kind of data I think is really going to help women with this transition because there are so many questions. Like I just had an email today from a patient. She started bleeding again and she was in her late luteal and she's like, why is this happening? And she's frustrated and, has a cyst that we're trying to detox from. And I'm like, listen, like it's going to be okay. We're collecting data. Your body is just going through some confusion right now. It will get back on track. So let's keep testing and we will figure this out. So in perimenopause, it's a lot of, reassurance that, other women are going through these things too. And you really just, like I said, you have to anchor yourself. You have to make sure you're not listening to the lies that you're hearing in your brain or the negative things that people are saying, and that you just stay on your own health journey.
I like that advice. So we talked a little bit about some of the mistreatments that are being applied during perimenopause, like antidepressants or birth control pills. What are some of the misdiagnoses that you hear about when people are in perimenopause?
Yeah, well, I would say the big one is anxiety and depression. Um, you, and then they're just put on medications. I've had patients put on, benzodiazepines, which are really hard to get off of. So that is a big one. Um, if someone's getting heart palpitations, that one. Usually it is corrected with hormones, and then post-pandemic, there's some other things that have played a role with heart stuff, but we still send those patients to get a full cardiac workup. So I think that is completely appropriate to get proper workups. When it comes back to the mental issues with perimenopause, I really like women to focus on the autonomic nervous system and being in parasympathetic rest and digest, just being out in nature, doing breath work, activating the vagal nerve. So really focusing on that can be very helpful. Also, when we look at, prayer, meditation, we know that those things can actually decrease inflammatory markers such as interleukin 6 and C-reactive protein. So that's also really important for women. Um, I think another thing that is sometimes misdiagnosed when when a woman is just gaining weight, they're not given a lot of help with that. So they're just told to eat less they're told it's their fault. I don't know. It's just like a lot of blaming with women. Like when you were saying about like gaining weight around the stomach, and that's cortisol, yeah, lymphatic stagnation, estrogen detox. So they're just, I don't know. I mean, now it's crazy with all the GLP-1s because now I'm guessing women would go in and want to lose weight and they're given like a high dose pharmaceutical, GLP-1, and then they're not counseled on body composition change. So that is another thing that's kind of frustrating because the last thing I would do to a woman in their 30s, especially 40s, because after 40, we're losing 1 to 2% of our lean muscle a year, is put them on a high dose GLP-1. They're not eating. There's another whole aspect, and I'm sure you get frustrated about this, that if we're losing massive amounts of fat and weight, that fat usually is storing toxins. And sometimes that was to protect the body. And then you're releasing them all. And then usually a gallbladder needs out and it's just more surgery, right? More time in the hospital. So if we're recognizing the weight gain, but we're not fixing the root cause, we're putting on a GLP-1, their body composition is changing and they're losing even more lean muscle because of the GLP-1, then you'll never be able to get off the GLP-1. And that's a concern because I love peptides. I mean, I've been using GLP-1s in practice for almost a decade, but there's a right and a wrong way to do it. And that goes back to like root cause medicine. So that can be really frustrating because it's hard with weight with women because if they're skinny, they just want to be, they just want to be thin, right? They don't understand the long-term consequences of losing muscle. So if a doctor is prescribing a GLP-1, low and slow, you don't need to just keep ramping up and ramping up. It should be the body composition change and not the weight loss. So a lot of women are struggling with that. Sometimes women will have, gut health or histamine issues flare up. And once again, we need to go back to what's going on with the gut, with our diet. Do we have any infections that have been there forever? And it's the scale is tipping and things are worse, like candida. So many women have candida or yeast overgrowth and then mold layered in. So it's it's hard when women go to their primary care doctor and sometimes they're not even misdiagnosed. They're just told that they can't find anything. So then, it's great when women seek out, like a lot of the women that come to me, they're just like, I didn't believe that there was nothing else going on, or they wouldn't test my hormones because they said it wouldn't help them. And we have to understand when you go to an insurance-based conventional doctor, I mean, their goal is just kind of to get you in and out. I mean, it's not their fault. The hospital is dictating their time with patients. I had a friend that was a breast or is a breast surgeon, and she had administration, like the nurse that was like in charge of the administration, tell her, I don't care if your patient's crying and you just told them they have breast cancer, you can only keep the appointment to 15 minutes. Like it's crazy the stories out there. And what did my friend do? She left. She got a new job and she's happier. So
Right.
not everyone can do that though. There's a lot of fear around leaving your job or speaking up to administration. So they kind of have a lot of these doctors where they want them. So what do you do? Well, you invest in your health like you invest in your car. When we have our car, we know that car insurance is just car insurance. It's for catastrophic events. It's not for the oil change, the changing tires. It's not for that. So why are we treating our health different? Like insurance is for ER visits. It's for like my son, he had a murmur that was heard at the pediatrician. So we took him, to Vanderbilt and got an echo and got an EKG and it was all fine. But that's why you have insurance. Okay.
Right.
I,
Right.
yeah, I pay extra for supplements for him. I do cranial sacral on him. Pay extra for his ALF device, for his airway and jaw. So we have to tuck away money for our health and we need to seek seek doctors, practitioners that they like believe in us and they want us to get better, and they are not tied to someone breathing down their neck that they have to turn patients over, like a server in a restaurant, or you're flipping the tables over. So
Right.
yeah, so I think that that's the hardest part when people come in perimenopause or with any disease or concern, and they're met with that resistance and they left feeling defeated. Well, the model, as you said earlier, it's not for chronic disease. It's just not.
No, no. And this is a model that is very capitalistic. It's all about money for service, right? And that's how they make all that money is they turn the patients over. You get a 15-minute appointment and that's it. If you have more to say or there's deeper to dig in what's going on in your health, there's no time for that. There's no opportunities for your doctor to dig into that with you.
Right.
So I couldn't agree more with what you just said, that you really need to keep your own financial reserves available so that you can seek care outside of our allopathic medical system and outside of our insurance coverage.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you brought that up. You call this whole season a metabolic reset. In fact, that's the title of your book. So can you explain more concretely why this is a metabolic reset versus well, I guess I don't know how we've already always pictured even menopause, right? It used to be called the change, and nobody talked about it. Have you gone through the change? But certainly nobody talked about what happened leading up to the change. But you're saying this affects your entire metabolism.
Yeah, it definitely does. And this is where we see a lot of weight gain in perimenopause. And we just see women that are very intolerant to carbohydrates and processed food, sugar, oats. I think oats are a terrible idea unless you treat them like a dessert. Yeah, I'm like, they're just a terrible idea. I mean, I don't know doesn't spike. Well, it's funny because all the health influencers or health coaches that like in their 20s, like overnight oats, it's like cool, you can do that in your 20s, like go for it.
Right.
But over time we become more insulin resistant. Our body gets kind of overwhelmed by the sugar. So these sugar spikes, they wear down our body and our cells become less resistant, hence insulin resistance. Now, other things can make you insulin resistant. Chronic stress, even childhood events, we call it the ACE score, where you had adverse childhood events. We know that that puts you at increased risk for like all diseases. So there's trauma, there's cortisol, there's stress that can make you more insulin resistant and cause those sugar spikes. We see hormone changes do this. We see disease. So a lot of the times my patients will get frustrated. They're like, I'm not stressed. And I'm like, yeah, but if you have a stealth infection, a chronic infection in your body, that is causing stress on your body. So we need to fix that. And really with a lot of these chronic diseases, and everyone's talking about MCAS and mast cell activation lately, it's all the same. It's all root cause. It's your body doesn't feel safe, and we need our body to feel safe. It's kind of interesting though, because when you watch people's continuous glucose monitor, I'll have patients that are doing intermittent fasting because everyone is. And they watched a TikTok and this person lost 20 pounds by just intermittent fasting. Well, we're not all the
Right.
same. And they're probably lying. And it's probably AI now at this. So literally, like nothing online is real. Like, well, you go to conferences, that's how we met. Like, aren't you
Yeah.
sometimes like, oh, this person doesn't look like this on their social media? Or, it was funny actually. I went to a conference and someone said, I look better in person. And I was like, oh, thanks. But then also, like, I must look bad on my social media because I'll do stories where I'm like in my pajamas in bed with my frownies on, like, anyway, it's really funny. But just everyone listening, like, come on, like, these things, these claims, these people say, they're not really like truthful. Like, let's be honest. So, anyway, it was really cool for this patient. So, she was actually menopausal. We were getting her hormones figured out. She did intermittent fasting and she actually gained weight doing intermittent fasting. Like how annoying would that be? But this happens all the time to people, right? Like you try a new diet and then like you maybe lose 2 pounds, but then you gain 5. Like it happens because we're working against our body. So she was getting a big spike in her glucose, like whoop, like a big spike. So that's when you're at a decent level glucose, say you're at like 80 and you spike to like 180 or 150 and then you drop, okay? And repeated spikes over time can lead to insulin resistance. So she was gaining weight, her body, that was stressing her body out. So when your body's stressed and getting more insulin resistant, it's gonna hang on to every little piece of weight you have. So we had her switch to doing like 3 meals a day, and then she actually dropped weight just doing that. So she did really well. Also, our menstrual cycle. This is a big thing. So I will do cycle syncing with patients and I will have them, if they're going to do intermittent fasting or a fast, because fasting is good for gut health, for autophagy. There's lots of good science behind fasting. They'll do it during their first half of their cycle, which is their follicular phase, which is first day of bleeding to ovulation, so days 1 through 14. I will have them do it there. It's interesting because estrogen actually makes us more insulin sensitive. So you would think opposite, oh, eat more carbs, but it's more of like a stress thing. So I'll get into that. But so I'll have them, they're more stress resilient during that first half of their cycle. So for them to maybe start carnivore diet for 2 weeks or do the fasting, their body handles that stress more as opposed to luteal phase, so second half of cycle, our body actually demands more calories because of progesterone, because we're getting ready to, have a fertile egg and home a baby, and you just want to like cuddle up on the couch and like have a bowl of popcorn. So we're more insulin resistant. They have actually done studies in females where they've tested their insulin and their HOMA-IR scored, and you're actually more insulin resistant during that luteal phase. So this isn't like eat chocolate chip cookies. This is like get some nutritious, healthy carbs, okay? And increase your calories. So I will have patients that stay more keto, high fat, high protein, and they'll just increase calories during the luteal phase. Because if we're starving our body in the luteal phase, we're going to basically steal from our body making that progesterone and produce more cortisol is the concern. Now, what I love for women in perimenopause, and menopausal women can still do this and cycle around the moon or just have days where they feast and then they fast, is that we're not having so much guilt around eating where we're restricting all throughout our cycle or restricting all the time. And we weren't meant to do this. We were meant to have some different fluctuations in our diet where sometimes we are, resisting and, not restricting, but fasting from stuff. I mean, this also is a dopamine thing. If we're just allowed to eat whatever we want all the time and we have no self-control, that is going to affect, our dopamine too. So you can look at it that way too. But the best thing, if you're like, wow, like I have no idea what she's talking about and I have no idea how I respond to food, then get a continuous glucose monitor. It's a little device that you wear on your arm and really helpful to determine how you react to foods, what happens if you fast, what happens if you eat 3 meals a day, what happens if you snack all day, which isn't recommended. So really cool. So I would tell people that. And on my YouTube, I actually have like an hour glucose masterclass where I just like go through everything because I recorded that for my patients that because I couldn't explain everything in, an appointment. So I'm like, here's an hour to talk about blood glucose and your stuff. Because it is complicated, but I will tell you, stable blood sugar in perimenopause and menopause. That's going to help your weight. It's going to help your mood. Stable blood sugar means you're metabolically flexible, so you're not going to get hangry. You're not gonna you're not gonna rage out, like those hangry commercials. And we're preventing dementia, right? Dementia is now type 3 diabetes, and we don't want type 2 diabetes. We don't want any of that, right? So just really pay attention to your blood sugar and there's so much out there like that you can do. Everyone's obsessed with protein and protein does help balance blood sugar. So it's not a bad idea. So
Wow, dementia is type 3 diabetes.
yeah, it's
I've
coined.
never heard that.
Yeah, it's coined type 3 diabetes, dementia. Yeah. And it's heartbreaking, right? Especially like women. I just feel like we could do so much better for stable blood sugar. And I do a lot in the carnivore community and animal-based community. And why those people do so well is because they're taking out basically all processed food. And animal meat and carnivore specifically is high protein, high fat. So that's why they're thriving because they're keeping their blood sugar stable. But I mean, over time, that's why I do think that we should cycle things in every once in a while, and listen to your body. Because there are people that are on carnivore all the time that they don't do good, like they do need to add back in carbs. So I do think it's a really specific to the patient and person once again.
Excellent. So, I know as we're getting close to the top of the hour, we want to get to wrapping this up, but I know we haven't talked that much about the other cornerstone of your practice and your belief. Would you like to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I would love to. So for me, my practice is faith-based. So I am a Christian, and I really think that when we look at prayer and meditation and rooting ourselves in belief, of God, I think that is so tied in and important to our health. I also think specifically in perimenopause and like postpartum, like menopause, all these shifts of hormones, I feel like the enemy, the devil does attack us. And I've seen that with women. So attacking, our minds specifically, right? And this is really hard, especially if you're on a health journey and you are attacked like that. And we really have to be aware of it so we can recognize it. And really when you think about lies, it's anything negative. Anything negative that is going through your mind, I mean, that is not from God that loves you. And, it talks about that in the Bible where, a father, if his son, ask for something, he wouldn't give him a snake, in return. So when you listen or when you're having these negative thoughts and you listen to them and feel them, I mean, that's going to impact your body. I mean, we know that negative thoughts impact our body in a negative way. And we know things like meditating and prayer actually help. I was saying earlier how it decreases interleukin 6, which is inflammatory marker. It's decreasing inflammation because gratitude also, when we look at the studies with gratitude, it actually rewires your brain. So, one thing I challenge my patients to do a lot is to have a gratitude journal. And this can be so simple. So, even when you're having a horrible day, you're in perimenopause, you're struggling with an autoimmune disease, you're feeling your body feels bad, there's still things you can be grateful for. And just writing down 3 things a day in a gratitude journal or saying them out loud. Um, I know I had a friend that was going through a hard postpartum time, and me and another friend, we started a group chat over text, and every day we text each other 3 things we were grateful for. So it's also helpful to have an accountability partner, kind of always see the positive in it. I also think that, being in nature is really great. I look around, I was walking barefoot today and just watching, we just got ducks 6 weeks ago. So just watching the ducks like go in the pond, and they're just like so funny. They just quack and shake their tails, and just being grateful for, the beautiful creatures and the sounds. And I have guinea fowl that eat ticks because ticks, there's so much drama with ticks right now. So, just grateful for the chickens and guinea fowl that are, eating ticks and saving my kids from ticks. So gratitude is just so important. And we also have to just watch what we consume. I think that it is so hard right now for social media, especially for women or people that are dealing with any kind of disease, mental, physical. And we are, first of all, comparing to people on social media. So we're consuming stuff that doesn't make us feel good inside. So we need to change that and listen to things that are going to bring us joy and positivity. This could be also like listening to music that maybe is pretty toxic, watching TV shows, like I don't know about you, but like what was it, like 10 years ago, I read a book talking about this and I stopped watching any violent movies and stuff, like anything. Because when do people watch TV? Like right before bed. So then like you're going to bed, you're letting the enemy infiltrate your brain. It's just bad. So just be more mindful of that. And you might not have ever thought about it, but we are what we can consume. That is food. What we consume makes us, but also the media, the content, the music, the movies. So just be mindful with that. And I think that became really apparent when I became a mother. And, your kids are they are sponges, and so are we. So you just have to be really careful with that. So just if you've never paid attention to it, just kind of pay attention to it, make some changes, start with a gratitude journal and see what it does, see how it helps.
I think one of the big lessons that has been coming out in almost every episode in this podcast is how much we can do ourselves to change what
Mhm.
our life is looking like. And there's so many different aspects to think about all these things in our modern world that are affecting our health. And I agree that that is a big one. And the violence in our communities and in our country is sometimes feels absolutely overwhelming and it makes you feel helpless. And that is a recipe for going downhill with your health for sure.
Yeah, it really is. It brings a lot of anxiety.
Yes. Yes. And helplessness, right? Because then you feel like, well, there's nothing I can do. But what you're saying is there absolutely is something you can do. You can um, resist the indoctrination in your own world and yourself, and you can put limits on the types of violence that you consume, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, I told a patient one time like and I loved talking to her about politics. She was great, but I told her I'm like you have to turn off the news. I'm like you're done. I'm like go join like a book club. I'm like you're done with the news and she was good about it. I mean, sometimes it's a little tough love, but you don't notice it when you're so like entrapped in it. So yeah, I mean, my husband knows I don't watch the news and I don't like it. And I'm like, if it's important enough, like it will probably show up on one of my friends' like social media feeds. Someone will text me. It's okay. So, and it's not just like sticking your head in the sand, like an ostrich or something, but like it's just limiting. It's limiting it and making sure you're protecting your health and your peace because we also need to heal, especially if you're in a healing crisis. I mean, that's very important for your body to feel safe and not have that really dangerous negative input coming in.
Yes, those boundaries can be essential. I completely agree. Okay, so are there any last words before that you'd like to share with the audience before we move on to where people can find you?
Yeah, of course. I like to say, strong in faith, strong in health. So just don't give up hope out there. And remember, I was told that there was nothing I could do about my Hashimoto's, and it was from a doctor that I trusted and did a great job on my surgery, but not ever. There's only one person that knows everything. And, even us doctors, we're learning every day and we want to partner with you on your health. It's a partnership. So if you feel like you're seeing someone that it's not a partnership, then just go. Like people try on different clothes and shoes. Go find a different doctor that you really can work with as a team.
Excellent. So where can people find you and connect with you?
Yeah, so my Instagram and YouTube, I am most active. It's integrative Dr. Mom, integrative DR Mom. And then Healthy by Dr. Jen is my website where I have everything linked there also, but I have a lot of blogs, free content, protocols to help people feel better.
So I know your last name, it might be a little bit of a stumbling block. Maybe you could spell that out for the audience.
Yes, it's just Healthy by Dr. Jen is the website. And then if you want to look up my last name, it's Pfleghaar, Pfleghaar.
Excellent. All right, Dr. Jen,
Yeah.
such a pleasure to have you on today. I feel like I learned so much about perimenopause and my own body, which is always such a bonus in every way. So thank you very much for coming on and sharing all of your knowledge.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Please tune in to the next episode of The Inflammation Investigator to hear our next guest or another solo episode. I will see you then. And that's another case filed on The Inflammation Investigator. Remember, every symptom is your body's way of communicating. We just need to learn the language. If today's episode sparked something for you, I want to hear about it. Share your own investigation discoveries with me on social media at Elizabeth Yarnell, or find me at elizabethyarnell.com. Your experience could be exactly what another listener needs to hear. And make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. And here's the thing about investigations, they work best when you're not going it alone. If this podcast is helping you uncover the answers you've been searching for, please like, rate, subscribe, and review, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. As a new podcast, these actions mean more than you know. Want to dive deeper into your own inflammation investigation? Head over to inflammationinvestigator.com, where you can take my free inflammation quiz to uncover which hidden triggers might be affecting your health. Until next time, this is Elizabeth Yarnell, your inflammation investigator, reminding you that the solutions to your health issues are out there. Let's find them together.